So the rishis were very clear that create only as much is necessary. Must know, don't worship the creative principle, because whatever you worship, you want to do more of it. So the creative principle should always be tightly controlled with wisdom. The other two.
Can you elaborate this a little bit more? As I just
So in our Hindu tradition, there are no temples to Brahma, only two, right? But how many temples to Vishnu? Temples and beautiful temples. And Shiva is not worshipped as a statue, as an idol. He's only worshipped in the linga form. And you must understand this. Brahma is the creative principle. Creative principle, if it cannot be restrained, will become cancerous. So that is why they said the only way you should worship the creative principles is through knowledge. That is why the consort is Saraswati and Vedas. Brahma is holding the Vedas, the four heads. The fifth head which Shiva came and cut. Why? Because it wanted to be more powerful than it was supposed to be, the creative principle. That they want to create more and more and more.
Welcome, Nivedita. Welcome to all the listeners to another episode of Wednesday Wonders, Unveiling Spiritual Secrets. This podcast is all about demystifying the secrets that has been shared already in our scriptures, and how can we make it relevant for a modern generation. People who are inquisitive, they want to know, they're curious, what is the reality, ultimate reality, and how can we benefit from some of this knowledge that has been shared in our scriptures, in our modern lifestyle. So essentially, this is the goal for these discussions. We had an amazing discussion previous episode, the very first episode last Wednesday. And I'm so excited and looking forward to this episode today. These are the sessions where I feel I learned maximum because I am 100% present in these sessions. I have to be really focused, really get the maximum from this discussion. And so I'm really looking forward to this. And I know a lot of you would also be very interested in discussions. So please keep following and listening. And it really encourages us to do these more recordings of our discussions. With that, I'll come to today's topic. Coming from the previous episode, the last episode that we did, we discussed about consciousness, about energy, and about like how all of it connects with the whole universe. This is a starting point. We had a very in-depth discussion on that topic. And today I'd like to take it a little bit further from that and understand sort of related to some practices. I would like to understand, my first question for you, Nivedita, for today is, would you help me understand how scriptures or the knowledge that has been shared, the spiritual concepts in the tradition, it connects to the modern, basically the quantum level of understanding? Can you give some example knowledge that actually connects with the modern science?
Yeah, no, it's a very relevant question you ask, because, a generation is coming out of religion. They are rejecting religion, but not realizing the role religion had to play. Because early on, these Vedas, which is our the source book for Sanatan Dharma, the ancient wisdom from India. So that's a wonderful question, Ragini. A lot of young people, modern people are asking that question because the modern mind is so intellectual that it's having a hard time dealing with religion. Religion was at a time where people were connecting from the heart, from feeling. But now people have grown in their intellectual capacity, and they are able to and willing to understand and grasp level understanding. If you look at it, our Vedas and Upanishads were actually quantum exposition about the supreme reality. But at that point, people were not ready to listen to it. So what they did is took those principles and put it into the Puranas and it as stories, so that people could understand those concepts. And in one of our podcasts, we'll deal with any of our podcasts going forward, we'll deal with those stories. That principle-based reality, the people 5,000 years ago maybe were not able to deal with it, so they made it into a personality-based religion. Right now, you don't have to accept the religion, but you can understand the principle that came from that religion. So in Sanatan Dharma, they're talking about this one intelligence essence, one consciousness, which is the Brahman, which is what modern physics and quantum physics is also talking about. You have to take away from this, and I'm not an expert on quantum physics, but when I hear people talk about it, I'm able to make the connections between what I've read in the Vedas and the Upanishads. Basically, matters, but your reality is not your reality. What he's saying is this material existence is important. You and I exist, we have a transactional reality, but it is not our ultimate reality. Our ultimate reality is we are spiritual beings. We are not human beings trying to be spiritual. We are spiritual beings trying to be human. So that is the gist of quantum physics applied to Vedanta. So having said that, the main thing from physics that we can bring into Vedanta is modern world, they think about everything is deterministic, fate, it's done, we have no choice. Modern people feel when you, every time you have hit a roadblock or a challenge or a problem, you realize that you have so much powers. But this is where the quantum physics contradicts, or not contradicts, transcends classical physics, which is that below the subatomic level, there's only energy. So this is the quantum level is a level of pure potentiality. So you are not an onlooker, you are a participatory, it's a participatory universe. So there's a famous double slit experiment where it says that the whole world is made up of particles and waves. Waves is possibility, particles is something that has condensed into a material reality, right? So that material reality you can change if you go back into the world of possibilities, right? So that is where when people don't have a choice, I say to people that no, you are the creator of your reality. Your observation, it's called the observer effect. Your vision and your goal and your attention changes your reality. It is not set in stone. So that's one thing. There are other examples from quantum physics, the entanglement. They talk about that two particles, once they're separated, if they will always be communicating with each other at all points, which is what we're talking about, the Paramatma and the Jivatma. The original soul, the consciousness splits into billion souls, but they're always in communication, always connected. That connection is never broken. That in essence is the concept of entanglement. Then we are talking about superimposition. These are deep concepts in quantum physics, and I'm not claiming to go deep into it, but in modern world, in the classical physics, what we think, either this can happen or that can happen. But superimposition says both can happen. In the quantum field, everything is a possibility. Both opposites are possible. On whatever you focus, that is what you're going to manifest. So that is called the superimposition. It's not local. And once you understand that non-locality, it's called in the physics parlance, once you understand, then you will be able to realize the power of prayers, the power of telepathy, the power of divination tools, because everything is possible. Nothing is written in stone. You can change anything. Right? It is not either or. If this happens, this cannot happen. Both is possible. And the example I'd like to give you is like a video game. When we are playing the video game, all the moves are coded. But if you choose one move, you will end up losing the game. If you choose another move, you will end up winning the game. So the possibilities exist. What you choose. And that's where we talk about the confirmation bias. What are you looking to manifest? So that's another thing. And of uncertainty principle, which of Heisenberg, which runs into your fate and destiny. People are always in a quandary, how can it be life is fated and then you say you have free will? Well, yes. That's the uncertainty principle, that it is, to a certain extent, it is fixed as destiny, what you have already put into effect. So your previous thoughts, feelings, and emotions are destiny. It is, you have to experience the effect of that. But how you respond to that is still in your control. So going forward, you retain the power to change how you experience life.
So what you have done in the past, you are experiencing based on your past actions currently. So this is your present life going on, present reality. Yes. But what actions you're taking now, it's going to be a big factor in your future.
We will have to touch upon karma. You cannot explain this without touching upon the law of karma, which is that karma is not a penalizing thing. It is a basically cause and effect kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. The law of cause and effect. So everything that this is not the first life we are living. We have lived many lifetimes, not just as human beings. From single cell amoeba, we have developed into this really multicellular intellectual beings. But the memories from all those things are still saved in us and in the Akashic record. And every lifetime, you decide to work on a certain package of lessons, which is called the karma. It's not bad, it's not good, because these lessons help you to expand, grow, and evolve. So if you go from instinctual to intentional, and that thing, that Akashic record which holds is a repository of all your karma, meaning all your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, is called Sanchita karma, accumulated karma. Every lifetime you bring a packet down. That is called prarabdha. That is destiny. Nothing you do will change that, because you have put it into action, not God, not anybody else. You have put it into action. But you have purushartha, your effort. You can, how you respond to this. Do you respond to this tit for tat? Then it will keep on going. That cause and effect will keep on going. Or you respond to these things with, how do you respond? With love, forgiveness, gratitude. You change it immediately. And you and I have seen how, when you practice forgiveness, when you practice gratitude, how you are able to change other people's attitude, behavior, response mechanism, right? It lies with you. And then
it's you, right? This is what my understanding is. Like, you have been this whole thing, actually feels like a video game, or whatever the game in life, right?
Yes.
That everything is like there, programmed and stuff like that. And based on what steps you take in the game is going to decide the fate of the game, right?
Yeah. But you have to bring a certain level of awareness, and that is where the spiritual practices help. Because what is the difference between animals and humans? Animals are bound by instinct. They don't have a choice of response.
Yeah.
Don't have a choice, except some very highly developed animals. And we hear rare stories where the pets can actually communicate with theirs and stuff like that. But human beings are the only creature that we know of that has that ability to go against instinct. I'm hungry, but I will not eat. I'm angry, but I will not scream. I am sleepy, but I will not sleep. Other animals cannot. When they're sleepy, they'll sleep. When they're hungry, they'll eat. When they're attacked, they will attack. That is called instinct. But we have that choice, and we must use that choice to grow in the scale of evolution.
So, like you mentioned about pieces that connect spirituality and the modern physics, and quantum physics and all of those kind of things. You give a lot of examples, but I'm just curious, and this I always think about, like, how even thousands and thousands of years back, those rishis during the Rig Veda times, and this is one of the first scriptures that was produced that time. And so how did they come to know about these things? Like, it's such accuracy things. Like, if you compare some of the information that they have provided, is actually the modern science actually validates that, right?
Yes. So that's a very interesting question, because think about it. You will have problem with, or we have a problem with accepting that, if we think time is linear, there is a beginning and there is an end. But in Vedanta, it says time is cyclical. There is no beginning, there is no end. Anadi and Ananta. Right? So the life cycle has been going around in cycles. It's called yugas. So just because right now science is coming upon it, they think that before this, nobody ever had this. And this is not the end. This cycle of knowledge gathering and growing and evolution will end, and another cycle will begin. And those rishis were in 5,000, 7,000 years ago, are the scientists and philosophers that we know them as today. So in deep states of meditation, they were able to download this information. They did not create it. They downloaded this information, and that is why the Vedas are called Shrutis. They heard. And for the longest time, it was passed down through just a word of mouth, verbally, not written. Because the minute you write it down, you have to understand that energy gets grossified. Thought is you can have so many thoughts, but when you speak, it's a certain level of grossification. You have trouble, right? You have to control your thoughts to speak. Now you can speak anything, but when you write, another level of grossification. What you can speak, you have to be very careful how you write. So that is why writing, they did not encourage them, because they had very pure consciousness, they had this unsullied, unconditioned, ungrossified mind. But over the time, Vyasa, the original sage, put everything down to writing, all the Vedas, all the Upanishads, all the Puranas, because he realized that with the passage of time, human beings' ability to remember, memorize, and will be compromised. That is why you look at now, nobody can listen to 1 hour podcast anymore. Nobody can read a book. They want only 10 minutes, 1 second, 2 minutes, because our span of attention has gone down. That is why Vyasa wrote down everything. But these people, going back to your question, these rishis is what? The root word, is the seers. They were the seers of ultimate reality. They went into deep meditation where you start disconnecting from your body, from your mind, from your intellect, and you become one with that intelligence. And that's where you access that information. And now today's scientists, what are they doing? They are looking for increasing the standard of living by going outward. But the rishis went inward, standard of life itself, the source of life. So Western world has been in search of how to increase the material well-being of the people. But these rishis were into how to increase the spiritual well-being, because they recognized that this was the substrate and the basis of everything. So if you take care of the inside, and there's a beautiful quote which you will enjoy, I know. It says that today everybody is feeling so lonely. It says that Vedanta takes you from I am alone to realizing I alone am. There is nobody else. I am the seer. I am the witness that is creating everything. And the example is, think about when people say, no, how can I create all these people, all these events and rest of the world? But don't you do that in your sleep, in your dream? You create all the countries and all the gadgets and all the interaction, but they're only in your dream. They're in your mind. They're not there in reality. So think about it. The supreme waker, the supreme intelligence, we are the dream creatures of it. What we are creating in a dream, the supreme consciousness is creating us in its dream. So it doesn't have to be that. Once you understand that, you will understand that we are creating everything. It is all a dream world. You just have to wake up. When you wake up from your dream, you realize none of that was real, but you cried and you laughed, you had a good time, you were scared, but you got up and said, that was a dream.
Yeah, that happens. Dreams look very real sometimes.
But there's only you, and you also not with your body, only with your mind.
Yeah.
That's what the supreme consciousness, the Brahman, is doing. So beyond the waker is a super waker.
So it's another form of like reality, maybe we can call, because see, ultimately, what is reality, right? That's what, I mean, sometimes you think, right? Whether this is reality or you're in the dream, and maybe, I don't know, people say that
reality, not another form of reality. In Vedanta, it's called Sat, is that which never changes. See, the waker, dreamer, and sleeper, the states are changing. In the waker state, your body and mind you are working with. In the dreamer state, your body you have dropped, only your mind. In the deep sleep, you have dropped the body, you have dropped the mind. But what is that one constant that cannot be dropped? The I. I am the waker, I am the dreamer, I am the deep sleep, again I am the waker. That I is the ultimate reality, not another reality. It's the only reality which is playing around with itself to experience itself.
Right.
But it is called Satya and Mithya. Satya is not truth. Sat means that which never changes. And Mithya is that which is there, because we are experiencing the transactional material world, but it is not permanent. The Satya is that which is permanent, will never change. Mithya is transient. So the people, the characters, the experiences, everything is changing. So the Vedanta, that's what is the difference between the whole concept between Sat, Asat.
I'm still thinking about that aspect where you talked about how those rishis went deeper within themselves and got this download and this knowledge and all of that things. It's thousands and thousands of years ago, but why it doesn't happen now in present times, or does it happen now also? People can achieve that kind of or we are different beings now, and then in terms of evolution.
Yes. No, it is happening, but you have to understand at the beginning of every cycle, the Supreme Being itself, the Vedas are not just knowledge, they are a personification of God himself. In Vedanta, Veda is equated with God because that is the original knowledge. It's not created. So at the beginning, there is that original knowledge. Each of the people will connect with it in their own ways. The rishis did it then. Even today, we are connected. Every knowledge that we get today is an infinitely small part of that. And there are many rishis in the Himalayas who are still in that state. They may not share it, or they may not be necessary because already been done. It's like the Constitution in America. There's only one Constitution. Every few years, they're not changing the Constitution, but many laws are being made, right? So similarly, those laws are already there. And then we are connecting with it in different ways. You just said how they do it. That is the path of yoga. Remember, we talked about last time, yoga is when that one intelligence has split, it uses the power of Maya, illusion, to become many. Yoga is one of these many to go back to the one, and that is what Patanjali's Yoga Sutra talks about. He gives a Ashtanga yoga, 8 limbs of yoga, the niyamas, yamas, niyamas, and everything. And you're talking about the asanas. People just think of yoga as the asanas, but that is only one small part. There's so much more. But the last 3 is the most important: dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Dharana is first, before that is pratyahara. You have to do all the other. Dharana is focusing. When you focus the mind on something, the mind will dissolve. So long-term focus is dhyana. Can you explain that? 3 stages is in the Ashtanga. You have the yama, niyama, and you have all the other things, practices. It ends with dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Dharana is when you've purified your body, purified your mind, then you sit down and you focus on something. Whether you focus on and there are several methods given in the Yoga Sutras, in Bhagavad Gita. You can focus on the Agya Chakra, you can focus on the nose, you can focus on your heart, you can focus on a light anywhere. When you focus your mind on something, the mind will dissolve. What is the mind? Is an inflow and outflow of thoughts. That is why you are trapped in the world of thoughts, but you have to go beyond thoughts to connect with that intelligence, because it is beyond mind, beyond thoughts. So how do you stop the thoughts? By focusing. That is called dharana. And then when you do dharana for a long period of time, it becomes dhyana. So you are ultimately, the example they give is like the dropping of oil without any break in that oil. Focus on one thing, and then without your effort, you go into a state of sama mane, same. Dhi is the intellect with that pure intelligence. You become one with the intelligence. So until then, you are here and aham and idam, the world is there. Then slowly you are concentrating until you and the world become one. That's samadhi. Your intellect and the universal intellect becomes one. That's when they download it, because they are not separate anymore. They become the Brahman. They become that, they connect with that intelligence, and they download information that they share with everybody else. So it is happening in today's world also.
But maybe at different levels and different intensity. Because when we do meditation, we go through some of the stages where we feel like, we are able to focus, and then we are able to meditate and things. But obviously the intensity is different for different people, like how you do meditation, like how many years you have been doing it, depending on that and other factors.
Absolutely. But think about it this way. In the quantum, we're talking about Einstein, we're talking about Schrodinger, we're talking about Heisenberg. Are all scientists like that? No. There are levels and intensity. If you have made it your life purpose, that's all you're going to do. And talking about the Vedas, there are 4 Vedas, right? Sometimes it's called Chaturveda or Trivedi, 3 Vedas. Essentially, there are 3 Vedas. The first one is Rig Veda. Second is Yajur Veda. Third is Samaveda. And fourth is Atharva Veda. So the first 3, basically, it's so beautifully planned and designed, corresponds to just all the information, just the intellectual information. Yajur Veda focuses most on the karma, how it's like the engineering. The Rig Veda is like pure science, principles of science. Yajur Veda is engineering. How do you take those principles and start tweaking it to make it useful in the material world? Otherwise, what good is that principle if it's not useful? And Samaveda is when it becomes a second nature. You don't have to try anymore. So an Atharva Veda gives you, under Atharva Veda comes Jyotish, comes Ayurveda, comes so many Gandharva Veda. Those are the remedial measures. If there is any problem in taking the pure principle and making it available, if there is any problem, then Atharva Veda gives you the ways to fix the problems. So if you look at it, Rig Veda is in Vedanta.
Pure science.
No, how do we learn anything? Forget about Vedanta. First is Shravana, then Manana, then Nididhyasana. What is Shravana? If you want to learn something, you go to a university or workshop or whatever, you just listen for the principles. Reflect and introspect and ask questions. You try to, okay, what is that? How did this become? That is called Mananam. Third is Nididhyasanam. You are practicing, right? So the same thing, Rig Veda is Shravanam. It gives you all the principles. It's just the whole principles, the syllabus of everything. Yajurveda is Mananam. You go through it. If I do this, then what happens? If I do that, then what happens? It's like taking the principles of physics or chemistry.
Like research, right? Like lab.
Like lab. And third is you are actually using a car or making a transplant or whatever, because it's actually happening. It's not experimenting anymore. You're living that knowledge.
So why Ayurveda was not part of it? Ayurveda is also...
It is Atharva Veda. So first three, let me give you this example. Let's say you want to be a musician. Rig Veda, I'm giving only an example, it doesn't deal with this, is the of music. Theories. There are so many theories about music, all the notes and how to combine them. Is the actual practice. So you read all the theories of music. Then what? You have to sit down and actually practice every day. You have to do the Abhyasa practice. Samaveda is actually singing, going to the singing. You're not reading the theory anymore. You're not practicing. It is your second nature. Now, if you go on the stage and you suddenly realize that there's, some scratchiness in the throat, what will you do? You'll go to Atharva Veda. Or if you want something else, is this the right time to do it? I've tried everything. It's still not working. Go to Jyotisha. Because there are other elements and powers that are at play. We are interacting with so many powers. So Atharva Veda is saying, this is not working. This is a troubleshooter book. This trouble, okay, let's fix this. That's the trouble, let's fix it. If the trouble is at the body, let's go to Ayurveda. Trouble is with the timing, let's go to Jyotisha. Trouble is with something else, let's go somewhere else. So it's a troubleshooter. So you have the principles, you have the practice, you have the actual living that knowledge, and then you have the troubleshooter. So these four Vedas are designed that way.
And all of these Vedas, in terms of how it came through rishis, because they got downloads and they created mankind, right? So was it like everything came together, or like years and years of different?
That's No, years and years of gap. And that's the beauty of Sanatan Dharma. And in this context, let us also talk about, it's popularly called Hinduism, but actually that word never appears in any scripture or any book. Yeah. It was used by outside people who said the south of Hindu Kush, they called Hindus. But Hindu doesn't appear anywhere. It's called Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan is eternal, forever. And it is true for all people, all time, all ages. And dharma is understanding the principles, right? Of how the world is created, how is it sustained, and how it is dissolved. So these rishis, there is no one source, there is no one person, and there is no one time. So every Upanishads, they would end with neti, neti, neti. Not this. And this is not enough. There's more to know. This is what I could infer in my lifetime. Right? So that is why there's not one book, not one prophet, not one source, but that is why Vedas are called God themselves. The knowledge itself is God.
Because we have given the human shape and size and everything based on that understanding, but actually it is not. The reality is not, it's not a human being. The God is not like that, right?
Maybe another episode will talk about how the Trinity is worshipped, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, because Brahma is never worshipped idol form, in a murti form. He worshipped the creative principle. How is it worshipped? In two ways. One is Vedas and one is Pranava Om, because this is the creative force. The Vedas, along with the Om principle, the primordial sound, created all of Jagat. So that creative, because if you're not careful with this creative principle, it is a double-edged sword. What happens in cancer? The regular cells are splitting and dividing up a multicellular structure. But when they don't know where to stop, that's where cancer happens. So the rishis were very clear that Create only as much is necessary. Must know, don't worship the creative principle, because once whatever you worship, you want to do more of it. So the creative principle should always be tightly controlled with wisdom. The other two.
Can you elaborate this a little bit more, as I just
In our Hindu tradition, there are no temples to Brahma, only two, right? But how many temples to Vishnu? Temples, and beautiful temples. And Shiva is not worshipped as a statue, as a idol. He's only worshipped in the linga form. And you must understand this. Brahma is the creative principle. Creative principle, if it cannot be restrained, will become cancerous. So that is why they said the only way you should worship the creative principles is through knowledge. That is why the consort is Saraswati and Vedas. Brahma is holding the Vedas, the four heads. The fifth head which Shiva came and cut. Why? Because it wanted to be more powerful than it was supposed to be, the creative principle. That they want to create more and more and more, right? The ego. Whatever information
very
given.
interesting, because I have never, like, I don't remember if I see, like, the temples with Brahma.
Yeah,
I mean,
and Vishnu, our Rishi said, you
yeah.
worship them in various forms, because whatever you have created after thinking through it wisely with the help of Vedas and scriptures and everything, you must maintain it beautifully. But even that must at some point come to an end, where the Shiva principle comes in. And why is Shiva principle in a linga? Linga is what? Neither a form nor formless. Brahma is formless. Vishnu has all the forms. Shiva is neither a form nor formless. Because the death principle or the dissolution principle, you must always be aware, but it cannot be in front of your face. If you get up in the morning thinking everything is going to die, everything is going to perish, you won't create anything, you won't sustain anything. So it is there to remind you that do not overlook it. Anything that is born has to die. And death is not the end of everything. It is just transformation. It's not the end of anything. So that is why these three principles, even though they have given various importance and hierarchy, the creative principle is tightly controlled by the rishis, because greed has no end. The one greed, one desire, if you fulfill, in its place will come 1,000. And if you don't fulfill it, anger. So they know why they're controlling the creative instinct. But once you have thought through it, dharmically created something, then you must maintain it to the best of your ability. But even that, at one point, you have to learn to let go. Because it's a transformation. Anything you hold on to will rot and purify and get stagnant. So they have thought through all of this, and they've made it into stories, the Puranas, because people won't understand these principles, right? If you go to villages and people who are not interested and talk about quantum physics and cells dividing and becoming, they don't. Just Brahma, don't worship. Only do the Vedas and the Om. And Vishnu, as much as you want. And Shiva, every now and then, understand, he's in control of time. Because when we say death, what is that? You've outlived your time, right? That the time is up.
Yep. It's so interesting, because you stand these concepts we're trying to understand in today's times, and it's really advanced concepts. I'm just like, these are coming from such old times, and it's still relevant, and it's so like useful if we understand the concepts, right? So
and also the stories associated with it. Hopefully we'll get a chance to, we can't talk about all, there are 18 Puranas, we can't talk about all the stories, but some relevant stories I would love to touch upon in connection with this in our future podcast.
Yeah, that is the idea. I think the main was to understand how these two pieces of our reality connects, the material and the spiritual aspect, what level, and what is the role of our scriptures, because we come from this power heritage, and we don't, like, many of the people I know, that they don't really value these things a lot. They think everything is science. I mean, and then we give too much importance to science and don't understand that there is a truth, right, that actually is there, and we can actually apply using those principles.
And classical physics, that's what it is. They stay in the level of the mind, whereas quantum physics goes beyond the mind into the level of energy. It's like electricity. And then how to harness that electricity in different devices, different objects, different machines. Same electricity goes into every object. That electricity is the supreme intelligence, the consciousness. It gets modified and put into a car, into a washing machine, into a phone, into so many things, right? Electricity is one, but the objects in which it is contained becomes different.
Yeah.
That is the difference between, classical model and the quantum model and our Paramatma and Jivatma. That Jivatma first gets grossified into God, Ishvara. Last time you talked about the connection between individual Atma, soul, collective soul, and the Brahman. I think we must end with that today. That Brahman has to first, it has no qualities, no name, no form. That becomes grossified, condensed, conditioned into Ishvara. Ishvara is the collective intellect, collective intelligence, mind. That becomes grossified into Hiranyagarbha. If you'll hear, that is the golden womb, which is the minds. The first is collective intellect, which is Ishvara. Then Hiranyagarbha is the collective mind. Then we have the Virata Purusha, which is the collective bodies. Then we're talking about Hiranyagarbha. The creation comes. What creates the Virat Purusha? Hiranyagarbha. It's our dream state. That is the dream state. What creates the dream state is our intellect, our ideas and beliefs that we have brought from other lifetimes. So that is the Ishvara level. Beyond Ishvara is Brahman, which is formless and nameless. Yes. So it grossifies, that intelligence, that principle grossifies into Ishvara, then Hiranyagarbha, then Virata Purusha, meaning collective intellect, collective mind, collective body. But it's the same.
We also have the Brahman element, right? The real us is like we also have that element, right? The
No,
Brahman.
it's not have. This is another topic. We'll talk about the Advaita, Dvaita. I follow the concept principally. Follow meaning I learn from there. It is the same. That Brahman, that electricity has to first be put into different things, right? You can't say this electricity is worse or better than another electricity. Electricity is the same. The instruments and the containers and the receptacles may be bigger, smaller, other things, right? It is the same. Yes, the same Brahman. Nobody can know Brahman because it's a principle, it is unknowable. Then it wants to experience itself. Then it becomes Ishvara. It's, that Big Bang happens and the Sankalpa, I want to experience myself. And from that Ishvara, it becomes, comes into the Hiranyagarbha, which is your collection of memories that creates like the dream world. How do you create a dream world?
Yeah.
And that brings me to this. This is very interesting. You will like this. You look at Vishnu sleeping on a snake, Shagara, and from his navel comes out a lotus, and on the lotus is the Brahma, right? That is where the creation begins. That Narayana is the Brahman, or is the Ishvara, and from his conscious, what does the navel suggest? Subconscious. This is the conscious mind. This is the superconscious mind. The navel, the gut, is the subconscious. From his subconscious rises this Jagat, on which is Brahma, the intellect, who creates all the Manus, who create all the rest of the world. So the same principle is followed in the cosmic level. Vishnu's subconscious say he creates this world. Just like we create our dream world from our subconscious, that principle also creates that entire collective world, universe, whatever you want to call it, from his own subconscious, his own memories. He wants to create whatever he wants to create. He or she or it or whatever it is.
I think I'm just taking it in one sentence here. The crux, like my understanding is we are living in this principle-based reality completely, right? Like apply it in your own, within your body, or in the world at different levels, but it's the same principles, that whatever way you want to view, but the principles are the same. It's like extrapolated in the cosmic sense, but
yes,
essentially the same principles are there, and they are very scientific.
Yeah.
And yes,
and also understanding that existence at a very minimum happens at 3 levels: at a body level, which is very gross, at a subtle level, which is the mind, and at the causal level, which is the intellect, and beyond that lies the Brahman. It cannot be known. For known, you have to have two: me and not me. But Brahman is everything, so not me doesn't arise in that realm. There is no not me, it's only me. I alone am. Right?
So if a person understands these things conceptually, do you think when they understand intellectual, like all of this information, and then they do the practices, is going to amplify the experience, right?
Absolutely. Such a wonderful question you ask, because as you know, just understanding is not going to make any changes, because it is like a ghost that does not have a body. just the knowledge. But just doing rituals without understanding is like a dead body. You're just doing the work, but you don't understand what you're doing. So when you don't understand the significance and do the rituals, it's very, very binding and restrictive. That's why people fought a religion and nobody taught them. Over the years, everybody forgot the significance, just kept on doing the rituals. So they revolted. But if you understand and do it, it becomes extremely liberating, because you've been given the entire laboratory of life. Now create what you want. Here is this acid, here is the alkaline, here is the fire, here's the water, here's the beaker. Do what you want. How liberating is that? As opposed to walking into a chemistry lab and not knowing what is what.
Yeah.
And then worrying, if I do this, there will be an explosion. If I do this, I'll create a 10-headed demon. You don't know what you'll create. You don't know what the raw materials are.
So I think this is the most significant, I think, the issue right now, that, people have just followed like one generation completely. I would say like maybe our parents' generation or generation before that, like focus too much on the rituals, right? And not understanding the concepts at some like higher level, right? Like the conscious level, at the scientific level. And now today's generation is like much more intellectual. They don't believe, because of, the past few years, they've lost faith in the religion and the rituals and everything, and now they are intellectual, which is again not good. So both are extremes. So we have to have a balance of all understanding these, try to at least understand these concepts, okay? See what makes sense for you. Because the other day I was listening to somebody and she explained very beautifully that science is science, works at a fact level. Okay, you see something, numbers and results, and then okay, you believe, you come up with some results, and then you decide, okay, this is the fact, right? This is proven. With spirituality is also like science, but it works as an experience level. So it's like nobody can tell you that you are feeling happy right now unless you know that you're feeling happy. So the spiritual concepts are also very scientific. The way to measure it, if it works for you or not, based on your own experience. So understand what are the principles, what are some of the concepts, try it for yourself, experiment with open mindset and see if this works for you. You will see that you have some different experience, and that is where, okay, now this works. I don't need any data, I don't need any research to tell me, because I know this is working.
And that is called, how do you know anything? In Vedanta, they say there are three basic forms of knowing. One is pratyaksha pramana. You are experiencing yourself. Nobody can tell you what you're experiencing. Next is anumana, which is inference. Third is sabda pramana, which is testimonial. So basically, pratyaksha pramana is you see a fire. I mean, the fire is happening in front of you. Does anybody need to tell you there's a fire here? You know there's a fire. Second is inference, anumana. You didn't see the fire, but you're seeing smoke. So you infer, how is the smoke here? There must have been a fire. The third is shabda, testimonial. You did not see the fire. You did not see the smoke. You read a newspaper article in Maui, there was a fire. So you must trust that. So these are lower levels of knowledge. First and the most powerful level of knowledge is internal, your own experience. That is pratyaksha. You go with them and you experience. And that is what religion brings, like we talked last time. It takes that infinite principle and, humanizes it. Yeah. That give it name and form. But spirituality is taking this body and mind and divinizing it. You go within, you work with this body, you work with this mind, you work with this intellect, you go within. And you'll realize, am I the body? No. Very quickly, you'll realize you're not the body. If you do follow the principles, you'll realize you're not the mind. You'll realize you're not the intellect. What are you? I am.
Yes. Okay, I think that was amazing, Neeta, and we really have covered a lot of it today. So I'm going to share it very soon with the listeners as well. And then next week we'll go even deeper into this and maybe get some more examples, like the way you're talking about just now. We'll get some examples and stories, and then connect with like more like scientific way, what is the true meaning of those stories.
Yeah.
So that, we can get more understanding. Because there is a gap definitely there, that, I understood so many things today, I think at a very deep level. So definitely people can benefit from it.
Let's talk about some stories next time, because that is where the problem is. When these principles were made into persons, and specific to a certain age or a certain culture or a certain value system. Now modern people are evaluating those values in today's value.
Yes.
Right? So that is where the gap is. And they are saying this is ridiculous. You cannot literally translate these stories because they are hiding spiritual truths, scientific truths. So we'll talk about stories next time.
Like a code, right? In a code language, they have given it. You have to just decode it in a proper way, but come with the mindset. I think the whole thing is because obviously, like the past few years, the way it has happened, people have actually lost, connection with the knowledge. So, anyways,
Yes.
So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Nivedita. Looking forward to having more discussions with you in the coming episodes. And yes, thank you. Have a
My
great
privilege and honor, and thank you for bringing your curiosity and your desire to learn. And in the process, I end up learning too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.